Well, good afternoon. I'm standing before you again with news, and typically when I stand before you, it's not great news, and today is the same. It is not great news. I want to make everyone aware that over the past week, our Special Victims Unit has been diligently investigating a case involving a misconduct of a Tulsa police officer. This officer yesterday resigned from the police department, and it's something where when we pin this badge on and we wear this badge and take an oath to the office, we have expectations that are far above what any citizen would typically have, and we know what citizens expect of us. This morning at around 11:30, former Tulsa police officer D'Angelo Reyes was arrested for first-degree rape. I want to give some details about what took place and how we came to this to where we are today. So I want to first start out by saying on April the 17th at approximately 3:44 p.m. Reyes met with the victim near 51st and Yale, and he made inappropriate comments to the victim as he met with her on a consensual encounter. During that time, he obtained her telephone number, and later that same evening, he used his department-issued computer to access information on the victim. Later that evening, while still on duty, Officer Reyes called the victim and met the victim at a hotel. Not just any hotel, it was her hotel. He then went into her room with her. He told her that it wouldn't take much to put a person like her back in prison because he had seen her record by running her, and she was frightened. She was fearful of what would transpire. During the course of that encounter, they engaged in sexual intercourse. On June the 2nd, detectives with our Special Victims Unit met with the victim. There is body camera footage that captures the first 60 seconds of an encounter that Reyes had with the victim. On June the 5th, after obtaining a warrant, the Special Victims Unit met with Reyes. The warrant was for his cell phone. During that encounter with the Special Victims Unit, his cell phone was seized. In his initial statements regarding the incident, he denied any allegations of wrongdoing. He was relieved of duty that day and placed on administrative leave. Our detectives continue to work the case and set up a follow-up interview with Reyes, and that occurred on June the 8th. This time, Reyes came to the police station with an attorney and met with Special Victims Unit detectives. Reyes admitted that he was untruthful in his initial interview. He also admitted that he used a false name as the victim described, the name Eric. He also stated that he intended to have a no-strings encounter with the victim, and that he believed that the intercourse was consensual. Yesterday, Reyes resigned from the Tulsa Police Department, and I believe you have his resignation letter that was issued through his attorney. This morning, the Special Victims Unit submitted an affidavit to the Tulsa County District Attorney's Office along with the case. The District Attorney's Office looked over the case, believed probable cause existed, and approved the charge, walking the paperwork through to a judge for a warrant to be issued for first-degree rape. Reyes turned himself in a short time ago. This investigation is still ongoing. Our officers acted quickly, our detectives acted quickly in trying to pin down exactly what transpired. I have stood before you numerous times and announced criminal charges on Tulsa police officers. This might seem like it's repetitive. However, understand that police officers are part of this community. They are part of they are human, and there are going to be mistakes that are made. We have a very robust internal affairs unit that monitors officers, as well as detectives and other individuals across our department. Our policies and procedures are valid, they are legitimate, and they are there for a reason, and they worked in this instance. The detectives took swift action, did not immediately discount the victim, and worked through the case and let the evidence take them to where we are today. Again, I don't condone this behavior, and I'd like to say that this will be the last time that I stand before you and tell you that an officer has been criminally charged, but it's not going to be, because again, officers are humans and they are going to do things and make mistakes. They are not going, some are not going to follow our policies and procedures or act as decent humans as we all expect them to. But again, that's why I stand here as a leader of this department, and I have a bunch of other men and women that stand behind me that want to ensure the integrity of this department remains solid. And this speaks to that. This speaks to that because it's an investigation that we came forward with and we brought to the district attorney's office, and it's a case that we did not discount but worked to the full extent. And I hope the citizens here in Tulsa have seen time and time again that when allegations are made against a police officer, we work that thoroughly and diligently to its conclusion. I'm going to now turn this over to District Attorney Steve Kunzweiler, who wants to make some statements.
Thank you, Chief Franklin. I want to extend my appreciation to the Chief. The transparency of this department has really been remarkable over the course of my career. The leadership of Chief Franklin has demonstrated a real willingness to make sure that the rule of law is upheld, and his efforts to have his department thoroughly investigate matters is appreciated by my office. Cases like this come to our attention really because of the hard work of detectives like we have in our local law enforcement, and in this particular case, the Tulsa Police Department. And it's those detectives who understand the rule of law, and that even applies and means when they're investigating their own. So obviously we appreciate the hard work of the detectives in this case who had to obviously investigate one of their own. You've heard me say this many times before, and I will repeat it. Certainly in Oklahoma, the citizens of this state all of us are entitled to the presumption of innocence, and because of that, Mr. Reyes enjoys that same presumption of innocence until and unless a judge or a jury determines otherwise. I do want to note that many crimes are crimes of opportunity, and the alleged facts in this case suggest just that. Many people become victims due to their unfortunate circumstances, and they are preyed upon because of those unfortunate circumstances. Those victims are afraid that no one will believe them and their story, and it takes courage for those people, whoever they are, to come forward and ask that justice be pursued on their behalf. Our office, the District Attorney's Office, has a victims witness unit to include advocates who are trained to assist any victim, regardless of their circumstances, through the criminal justice process. And we will stand ready, willing, and able with any victim who comes before the courts, and we will help guide them through this criminal justice process. So I will reiterate one more time, I think it speaks volumes of the Tulsa Police Department and its leadership that they will continue to be as transparent as they are in bringing these matters to our attention. This was brought to our attention earlier this week, and they apprised us as things moved along where things were at, and ultimately, obviously, we've made a decision to file criminal charges, and certainly we'll let the evidence speak for itself in a court of law. Thank you.
Do you have some questions for the chief? Or the DA director?
Can you walk us through the encounter that he had with the woman at 51st and Yale then on April 17th? He was on duty at the time, correct? Can you tell us what, I mean, he was on the clock, and what caused him to come into contact with this woman, I guess?
Yes, is anyone live? So,
We're all live.
Okay, so the question was what caused this woman to come into contact with the officer, and was the officer on duty at the time? Yes, the officer was on duty in patrol, working in a marked patrol unit in a police uniform, and he had just left another call, saw the woman walking her dog, and stopped and made an inappropriate comment towards her, and then had an encounter with her, asking her for her phone number and information.
I have a question, Chief. So he had been on the force for about 5 years, right? Did he have any former infractions?
The question was, did he have any former infractions, and that he had been on the police department for 5 years. Yes, that's correct. He's been on the department for 5 years, and he has not had any discipline with our department.
Can you talk a little bit about what happened between the complaint in April and now?
The question was to give a little bit more detail of the time lapse between the April encounter and today. This woman, like many victims, they don't want to, they didn't believe that their story was going to be believable. I believe somewhere in the neighborhood of 25% of victims report a sexual assault, and so that's no different in this case. However, there is a time lapse between the encounter and when it was actually when we became aware, and we became aware this month, just less than a week ago.
Did she come forward? How did you become aware of it?
We are still actively investigating this, and so I do not want to reveal all of the details on how we came about this particular incident, but the victim did come forward, and the victim is very cooperative with this.
And Chief, the body cam video that he was wearing at the time, you said captured a portion of his interaction with her until he turned it off, correct?
Yes, the comment was that the body camera did capture a portion of the encounter until the body camera was deactivated.
And how was it that he ended up at her hotel? Was it a conversation they had? And she invited him, they agreed him over, or he just told her, I'm coming over there? Or how would you characterize how she ended up, how he ended up in the hotel room?
The question was how did the Reyes end up at her hotel, and the answer to that is that after obtaining her phone number and her information and running her information through the record system, we believe that she was being preyed upon, and the officer went to that location seeking her out and called her.
Do you know if they knew each other before this encounter?
The question was whether or not the suspect and the victim knew each other. We do not have any evidence that leads us to believe that the suspect and victim ever ran across one another before.
Chief, in your opinion, do you think this was an abuse of power?
The question was if I think this is an abuse of power, and the answer to that is just outright yes, I do. Again, the citizens of Tulsa hold us to a high standard and have expectations of the police department. Every single one of our officers have sworn an oath to uphold that law and to break that down. Yes, that is an abuse. Yes, that is an abuse when you prey upon a victim and run a victim to discern whether or not you are going to go after that victim.
Chief, the DA talked about he commended you all on your transparency, and how important is that in gaining the trust of the public? And you've been very transparent on many things recently.
The question dealt with transparency on and what we're doing as a department. You know, we are. We attempt to be open and transparent with everyone. I think the only time where we have to deflect is when we're still investigating a case and there are implications to that or some type of litigation that comes after that. So we work very hard to be transparent. As we stand here today, you know, I don't want to be here. You know, this is a black eye for us, and it's a black eye for anyone in a uniform right now. And that's one of the things that I try to impart upon this department, is that no longer is it just the Tulsa Police Department that you are representing. It is the nation of law enforcement. So every law enforcement officer could today be impacted by what transpired today.
Chief, do you believe this was an isolated incident? That it was just a one-off, that this hasn't happened, or is there a fear that there may be other incidents? Are you investigating that possibility?
The question is whether or not this was an isolated incident, or are there other incidents out there. Again, we continue this investigation. Just because we have an arrest does not mean that this investigation has concluded. We are very confident, obviously, that this officer, our former officer, had contact with numerous people out there in the public. And so I think if there is anyone out there that believes they may have been victimized by this officer, then we are asking them to come forward and contact our Special Victims Unit and Lieutenant Darren Ehrenrich for an interview.
Last question.
Is there any chance this is going to wind up in federal court? Is this likely to be a run thing?
The question is whether this might end up in federal court, and if this is related to McGirt. At the present time, I don't believe that would be the case.
All right. Thank you very much, folks.
Thank you, gentlemen.
If you have any future questions, just send them to my office. We'll take care of you guys.